This is Barry Island, on the coast of South Wales. It's also winter. Some say that, long ago, a young boy came here on holiday, a holiday of which was so miserable that it changed the course not only of his life, but of British holiday history. The reason for this misery was simple. His hotel landlady locked him and his family out of their rooms during daylight hours. So they were stuck out there, amid the pounding foam and gale-force winds, unable to return to warmth until nightfall. The lad's name was William Butlin, and his story has been told many times before. I want to look at it from a different angle. Not just the history of Butlins, but the real purpose for its creation in the first place. That being, of course, the making of memories. Of course, it wasn't actually a hotel that Billy stayed at. It was a B&B, or bed and breakfast, a type of lodging often found as part of a private home, where you would pay for simply somewhere to sleep and a cooked breakfast in the morning. B&Bs were, and still are, the reality of holidays for thousands of people. But Billy Butlin obviously thought differently about them, and he wanted to do something about it. He wanted to change the way we go on holiday, and also to change the way we remember our holidays. The grand idea got started when Butlin, of whom by the 1930s had found great success with fairground attractions and rides, spoke with his friend Norman Bradford about a new business idea. That being, of course, to create a permanent holiday camp. An idea of which soon led to the formation of Butlin Limited in 1935, with Billy as the chairman. A sudden explosion of construction, vision and dream soon erupted at the chosen site. Within a year, the site was ready for the very first guests, and on the 11th of April 1936, the world's first Butlin holiday camp opened its doors. Norman Bradford, of whom had worked as an engineer during its construction, greeted guests as they arrived for this brand new form of holiday experience. And indeed it was perhaps Norman of whom first managed to capture something of the magic that would later be felt on all Butlin's camps. In late 1936, Billy realised that guests were not engaging as much as he had hoped in the entertainment and shows of which were laid on for them, and so he asked Norman to jump on stage and break the ice. And before long there was a shift in the atmosphere, a change in the minds and moods of those first holiday makers. The night was a huge success, and the kind of buzz could be felt in the camp, of which can only be felt when something great and powerful has happened there. People have come together, and in a moment upon the stage of life, memories were formed and burnt forever into the hearts of the young and old alike. Butlin, naturally, wanted more of it, and so he asked Norman to go out and buy a uniform, as to recapture the magic of that evening was not possible with just a few people. He would need an entire army of entertainers if this magic was ever going to be felt again. Norman returned with a suit in blue, yellow and white, the colours of the camp. In Billy's eyes, however, this suit was no good. It was too formal, too authoritarian looking for a place built, as the camp's slogan so beautifully put it, for all our delight. And so something else was chosen, something of which stood out in the crowd and could instantly be recognised by the holidaymaker, and something of which would soon become a powerful symbol, not only of Butlin's campsites, but even of the entire concept of holiday resorts as a whole: the Butlins' redcoat. Just like the deep red of their coats, the new redcoat entertainers were to be the pulsing heart of the new camps, the lifeblood of which saw them host entertainment for adult and child, lead dances, judge competitions, give advice and information, and be there with a smile and a greeting for all campers of whom entered the new Butlins world. That early Skegness resort, and later sites including Clacton and Filey, of which were for a time closed and their construction halted, given over to the Ministry of Defence when the Second World War arrived, were really something quite special. The intricacies of their stories have been told in detail by many, but what interested me was the reason why they were so popular. Why, as soon as the war was over, they reopened, more popular than ever before, with new camps having been used by the war effort like Ayr and Pwllheli, given to Billy to be reopened yet again as new Butlins holiday camps, bigger and busier than ever before.
But the most important journey you'll make this year will be when you go on holiday. But where would you like to go? Well, come with us and enjoy the finest holiday of your life. You'll remember every moment, and you'll be refreshed by the colour and gaiety of this new and attractive world full of wonder and delight. Here you will feel immediately at home. The Butlin holiday camps are like that. For instance, wherever you look, you'll see wonderful displays of flowers, a blaze of colour, whatever the season.
It really seems to me that Butlin managed to capture something of the mystery and majesty of memory making. Almost as if these camps were some kind of weird factories, designed especially to construct and produce a perfectly formed, long-lasting memory of a holiday where pure joy was all but guaranteed. After all, life on camp was semi-regimental. From 1946, for example, you would be woken up at 7:30 a.m. by music played through a system of loudspeakers, before being given set times for your breakfast and all other all-inclusive meals and snacks, and also times and schedules for the day's entertainment. Children might be taken away by redcoats for separate group activities, those same redcoats later on keeping watch at the chalets for sleeping children waking up, so that the parents could go out in the evening as they slept. And if you looked glum, didn't mix well, or were otherwise averse to having a good time, you could expect the special attention of a redcoat or two, making sure that they did all they could to encourage you to join in on the fun. It might sound rather odd to some, but for a public emerging from the dust and decay of the Second World War, it was exactly what they wanted. Like a splash of cold water to the face, abruptly waking you up from a long and restless sleep. After all, it has long been known that a change of environment and routine can work wonders for one's mental well-being, and nothing could be more different from the everyday than the inside of a Butlins camp. The colours, sounds and moods of the place, everything about it was removed from the outside world, so that it was like entering a different realm entirely, the realm of holiday. And like the flash of the camera against the backdrop of the excited mind, you would always remember your short days spent at Butlins.
Another good Butlin morning is here to begin the day. Wake up, and meet the fun halfway. Forget about work and worries, there's plenty of time for play. Get up, get out, enjoy your holiday.
The sun is shining and it looks like being another lovely day. So surely, lads and lasses, Rub the sleep out of your eyes and prepare for another day of grand fun. And remember, you've only 3/4 of an hour before breakfast.
Butlins, Butlins, Butlins by the sea. There's a holiday that's full of fun for Mum and Dad and everyone at Butlins by the sea. Take it slow if you want to, see a show if you want to. Feel free to have the fun that's really free. You'll have a really wonderful time at Butlins by the sea.
For many, the golden age of Butlins holidays was to be found in the continued expansion of the resorts into the 1960s, a peak period where the post-war gloom had long since faded, but the overseas package holiday had not yet fully arrived on the scene. Sometimes, over 50,000 visitors a week could be found in one of the 9 Butlins resorts all over the country. And in the years leading up to this, Butlins had also expanded their hotel division, the first of which had opened in 1939 in Borehamwood, and by the mid-1950s, more were added, including Brighton, Inglemells, and also here, in Blackpool. The Metropole Hotel, one of the oldest in the town, was from 1955, a Butlins site, and although it didn't have the full offering you would find on the campsites, it still had plenty of shows, entertainment, and of course, the redcoats.
Tune out if you want to, step out if you want to. Feel free to have the fun that's really free. You'll have a really wonderful time. It's free and easy, simply sublime, at Butlins by the sea.
By the early 1960s though, the campsites had expanded beyond all hopes and expectations, with Butlins Bognor opening in 1960, Minehead in 1962, and in 1966, a Butlins resort was built in Barry Island, the very same place where young Billy once came and witnessed the misery of the old B&B. This is quite fascinating, really. Almost like Barry Island and Billy Butlin had fates of which were somehow linked, each becoming literally imprinted by the other, changing each of their fortunes and their destinies. Like all other camps, Barry Island had redcoats and wake-up calls, swimming pools indoors and out, games arcades, bars and restaurants, endless shows and activities for all ages, and even a chairlift, of which took visitors down the steep hill to the island itself, where they could visit the famous pleasure park and make another kind of memory, that formed by the excitement of the rides. Billy Butlin knew all too well how fascinated we all are with the fair, how easy it is for memories to be formed there. He is credited as bringing the first Dodgems ride to the UK, securing an exclusive license to import them from Europe in 1928, and placing this popular ride into many of his parks to follow. This ride perhaps suggested something of our dreams and visions, the things we imagine we want to have and to be, and there under the canopy of the ride, we move in the same way as our fellow kin, and are sometimes brought together with them. This idea of the fair bringing people together was followed on with other rides and concepts, with none being quite so iconic as the Ghost Train, a ride of which Butlin saw great appeal in, and had one installed at each of his campsites going forward, as well as other guaranteed memory makers, such as the Waltzer, and of course, the game's arcades.
And here in an arcade, of course, with all these lights and songs and noises, lie hidden there things we would like to have, riches and fortunes, perhaps even the chance to know what the future holds with these wonderful fortune-telling machines. And then there are, of course, are in these arcades cute little mementos and trinkets that, for some unknown reason, we feel sentimentally connected to. So we might even fall in love with these little things, and we want to bring them home with us, and yet they're perhaps forever out of our reach, close enough to touch, and yet we would have to work if we really were to take them home with us.
Things might have looked, to the holidaymaker at least, as if this empire of joy could never fade. The name by now becoming so ingrained into the British consciousness that going to Butlins was almost synonymous with going on holiday in general. And because from the very start Butlins holidays were affordable and all-inclusive, for many children this world of redcoats and fairground rides was to be their first ever real holiday. And in those moments are made some of the strongest memories of all, things which might even alter the course of one's life, so that we find ourselves always called back to those things that we saw and heard there, and they form part of what makes up our likes and dislikes throughout all of our lives, like a shadow growing longer in the afternoon sun. Things on the inside, though, might not have been moving in the same direction as the Butlins holidaymaker imagined. Billy retired in 1969, and the empire was taken over by his son Robert, of whom had inherited the monumental job of keeping the camps running and bringing in the guests year after year. By the coming of the 1970s, holiday trends were beginning to change, and like the tide coming in to wash away the things you built from fragile sand, keeping things running smoothly was going to be no easy task. The new trend was, of course, overseas travel, finally made affordable with cheap package holidays, offering new adventures and guaranteed sunshine. Luxury hotels were in vogue. Drafty old campsites with a tannoy waking you up in the morning, not so much. Butlins was sold to the Rank organisation in 1972 for the price of £43 million, with Robert staying on as managing director. But changes were already being made to cope with a falling demand for these once incredibly popular holidays. The hotel sites at Ayr and Inglemells were closed, and the camps found themselves criticised for their regimental nature and basic accommodation, as well as being thought of as something no longer wanted when you can jet away for a bargain price and trade Blackpool Tower for the Leaning Tower.
I think this period of time for the sites is really interesting, but it all feels like a bit of a mistake. You only have to come to a fairground like this and see what the most popular rides are, and it's things like the carousel, the waltzer, the dodgems, the exact same attractions that Billy Butlin saw so much potential in. They are still the things that we flock to today, and really those are the things that we dream of many years later when all those holidays have long since vanished. These are the things, believe it or not, that we wish that we could live all over again. I also think it's quite interesting that some of these children's rides, the sort of shapes on them and the colours, they can appear quite strange to us when we look back at them as adults, especially if we come back years later and perhaps they're not quite how we remembered them when we were young. The paint might be crumbling away from them. They might even be fading away altogether, and it's quite strange because we have a memory of how it looked and how we remembered it, and then when we come back and it looks different, we think, did that really happen? It really does feel like another example of something that's in a world of its own, something that exists only in memory, and in a holiday memory, of which we might even ask ourselves, did it really exist at all in the first place?
None of this is more obvious than in the entertainment created for children at Butlin sites. For many children, almost every summer of their childhood would be spent at Butlins, and the activities that were put on for them make up the mainstay of their entire childhood holiday experiences. Redcoats might double as kids' entertainers, donning suits and playing the part of various characters, taking kids on adventures around the camp, hosting competitions and dances galore. And there was this sense of freedom for a child, the ability to go on rides time and time again, to go swimming, to go to playgrounds, to the beach, whenever they wanted to do it. It was all in a safe, colourful environment, the perfect space for a child to let their imagination grow, helped along by the songs, stories and activities of the dedicated teams of children's entertainers.
So one of these groups of children's entertainers was Whiz Kids and Wizzy World. And this really comes to my own personal memories of Butlin. So when I would go on holiday there, Wizzy World was the big thing. And they would lead all these adventures and activities. The main character was called Whizzer. And he was dressed in the exaggerated fashions of the day. He'd have a baseball cap and chewing gum and a skateboard, that sort of thing. And he'd have some companions with him called Brains and Polly. And I think Polly was supposed to have a bit of a crush on Whizzer. And I can remember the discos and things just so well. And I can remember actually coming through the camp in the morning, and I think we were hitting pots and pans and shouting wakey wakey. Proper Butlin stuff. Absolutely brilliant. And this is actually my own Whiz Kids t-shirt that I have kept throughout all these years through Butlin's holidays. It's obviously far too small to wear now, and it's a little bit stained over the years, but this is what it's all about. Keeping those memories, no matter how many years pass. It really brings it all back when you look at it. I also had a Whiz Kids cassette tape, and it had the songs on that the Whizzy Kids would actually sing during the discos. And you know, when you come home and you put that tape on and you listen to the songs, it really brings you back to those days, and all of the memories come flooding back to you.
When Billy Butlin died, on the 12th of June 1980, his funeral was led by a procession of redcoats, their usual cheerfulness washed away in a sorrowful union. There must have been the feeling of a great age ending, an unstoppable change, of which threatened to wipe away all the delight that Billy intended for his camps. That same year as his death, the Butlin site at Mosney Island was put up for sale, and 3 years later, in 1983, the sites at Clacton and Filey were closed for good, citing a lack of interest in customers' booking due to the effects of overseas travel. Clacton was originally sold to Amusement Enterprises, a group of whom reopened it as Atlas Park, a venture of which only lasted for 4 months before they were declared bankrupt, and the old site was sold again, this time to be demolished in order to make way for a housing development. And so, there, as the place of all our memories was mauled by the wrecking ball, the dust must have appeared like the ghosts of all our joyful holidays, rising to the surface for one final glimpse of the summer sun before they are carried away by the breeze. Robert Butlin resigned in 1984, a move of which for the first time saw no Butlin family member involved in the high-level running of the remaining parks. Was the proud name of Butlin to disappear? To be relegated to a lost time like a museum exhibit or a circus curiosity? For a time, it seemed so, as the rank organisation decided to modernise the camps to regain the lost visitors. The campsites were rebranded as Butlins Holiday Worlds. No longer a campsite, you see, but a holiday resort. The wake-up call long since muted, the mood altogether more relaxed and modern, fusing the traditional with the fashions and trends of the day, with even the redcoats seeing a brand new uniform, this time designed by iconic fashion designer Zandra Rhodes. In 1987, a bizarre TV advert was run where an old Butlin site is blown to smithereens, replaced with the investment of Holiday Worlds, perhaps suggesting that they viewed the old chalets as past their sell-by date, needing to be flattened and started over again.
Is born. Tens of millions of pounds are being spent on spectacular water worlds, thrilling entertainment and new accommodation. Butlins Holiday Worlds. Get your brochure now and be one of the first to experience it.
This Holiday Worlds era is actually my own era of Butlins memories, and I can remember very well the swimming pool at the site in Pwllheli, of which was an area of heavy investment during this time for the parks. These swimming pools were amazing. I'd never seen anything like it at the time, with their slides and wave machines, and ceilings covered in plastic flowers and such, trying to emulate a kind of subtropical world in the middle of Wales. Looking at the advanced water parks of today, like the Sandcastle Park here in Blackpool, it's not hard to feel they owe so much of their existence to these swimming pools at Butlins Holiday Worlds. Looking back on it as well, you could really tell that the rank organisation was working hard on keeping up tradition whilst also injecting modern trends into the parks. The chalets were still rather basic, but they'd been rethemed into apartments to lose the image of an old campsite. And everything was given an early 90s colour and energy, bursting with the feeling of the times, still unpolluted by the digital dystopia still to come. It was full of light and life, suggestive of a world on the move, on the go, a world with a future. Everything was dancing with joy, movement, enthusiasm, a spirit of which you could literally feel in the air, thrilling the senses.
It's great to be in Holiday World for mums and dads and boys. See the magic on everywhere at Holiday World. There's so much more to see, so much more to share.
Sadly, despite the greatest efforts of the owner to revitalise the Butlins empire, it was still not enough to save them from decline. In 1996, the site at Barry Island finally closed, having been run by Majestic Holidays since it was first sold by Butlins in 1987. When looking at archive images and videos of the site's demolition, I can't help but sense something of sadness in the scenes, as if a voice is crying out like the shriek of the gulls. Don't go. It's all been a huge mistake. The loss of Butlins in Barry Island also highlighted another issue with the closure of these sites: the loss of the holidaymakers themselves. Revenues dried up. The once bustling boulevards of bright lights and fun, now silent and still. Barry Island Pleasure Park, once owing so much of its success to the nearby Butlins camp, fell into a depression of many decades, with the famous log flume, designed by renowned theme park designer John Wardley, left to rot and rust in the sea breeze, before finally it too was demolished. I'm reminded when seeing these things of an old song, The Cloud Factory by Bill Caddick, where a woman laments of her father, of whom worked in a factory creating dreams, something she sees as fanciful and just for kids. But later, when he dies, the factory closes, and all the dreams drift away. I think this is a powerful message. We must capture our dreams and memories of these places, hold them in our hands and never lose them. For when the time comes that the final bricks of such places are crumbled away and replaced with some garish new development, they shall never be built again. And when we remember, we also recognise that, amid the decay and the destruction, we have lost something of subtle value, something important and special that we have allowed to escape and drift away into the clouds.
My father worked in a cloud factory. He'd come home wreathed in dreams each day. My mother took his cloudy clothes to wash the smell of dreams away. She'd scold and say, you and your dreams, they're just for kids and fools like you. But father, he'd just wink his eye and smile and say, are you sure that's true?
In the Daily Mirror, every reader can get a holiday at Butlins from only £9.50.
It's brilliant!
Only in the Daily Mirror, tomorrow.
In the year 2000, the Rank organisation sold their holiday division, including Butlins, to Bourne Leisure Limited, a move of which came after the hotel division was closed in 1998, with remaining hotels like the Metropole in Blackpool continuing under new ownership, the redcoats gone, and replaced with a different kind of theme altogether. The camps also dropped their Holiday Worlds branding, in favour of returning to featuring Butlin's name proudly and prominently on every site. Butlins, of course, still exists today, with the original Skegness site, as well as Minehead and Bognor still operating, now featuring a vastly different type of holiday to their earliest forms, and yet still retaining some things that never change. Redcoats, games, shows, rides. Sometimes we find that, just like with those most popular fairground rides, the same things that attracted the very first guests are still the things we all end up desiring even today. And that, when all is said and done, Billy Butlin's concepts and ideas really were something wonderful and powerful, and we still know it today. But what about all of us who visited those old Butlin sites in our youth, carrying within us memories of a world of which no longer exists? Is there anything of these places still left that we can actually touch and visit today? The site at Pwllheli is still open today as a haven holiday site, but most of the original features have long since vanished. And at Barry Island, the Butlin site is now home to a wild meadow of dancing grass, with modern houses on top. And if you look carefully enough, scars in the face of the earth from where the chalets and rides and memories took place. A memorial plaque was unveiled in 2014, forming part of a new garden on the site of the camp, where you can relax and reminisce on days gone by. The pleasure park is still open, now run by fairground mogul Henry Danter, but it's very different from its golden days. No longer the same thing as it was before. Not even close. The truth is that most of the things we saw and remembered from these sites has gone. And the mystery of memory means that only those of whom were there at the time can still see it, like a shadow or a ghost amid a changed skyline and world. And sometimes something can set it all off. The scent of candy floss, a particular song, or the mere glimmer of the sun on the midday ocean. And an old but vibrant memory can come rushing back, as if it was only yesterday. And you can thank Billy Butlin for that. Even if your own time at Butlins, like mine, took place after he had died and the parks had changed hands. For he surely knew how important it was to create a memory, how it had the power to alter destiny and dream, and how a simple moment, lasting for no more than a few seconds, could stay with us forevermore. There was another song from that old Wizzy World cassette that made me think about how all of these times and changes, these memories and moods, were really worth it, after all. Even if we found our holidays miserable, even if we couldn't stand being woken up by Radio Butlins early in the morning, chances are we'll still look back at it one day with great joy and pleasure. The song was called Oh Whizzer, and it's a brilliant tune considering it was written purely for children's holiday entertainment. It's got this 1960s doo-wop feeling to it, and it's a love letter to the character of Whizzer. But if we reimagine Whizzer as a personification of Butlins itself, not a kid with a baseball cap and chewing gum, but the spirit, the essence of the parks and all their meanings, then the song could be taken as a kind of eulogy or lament for the lost Butlin sites, a thanking them for the things they gave to us, and still do today, even though all traces of them have been lost from the landscape. They will live in our hearts for as long as we live.